Okay, welcome to Cuteness and Carefulness, Lecture 1, your class about Kinti and schemic facial features as a release stimulus eliciting um, carefulness behaviors and fine motor tasks. Let me see, start. So we're going to start by talking about cuckolding. If you guys aren't already familiar with mixed reproductive strategies, the worst evolutionary threat that can ever happen to a man is being cuckolded. Women are really talented at making men think that babies are theirs when they are not. So this article that you were required to read before this lecture was concerning a study regarding paternal resemblance, in which men are really talented at picking out babies that look like them, which all ties into Cinderella effect, which we'll talk about at the end of this lecture. So they call it mommy's baby, daddy's maybe. Let me see. So costliness of reproduction plays a big part here. Women always know that the baby is going to belong to them because they carry the baby for 9 months and birth it, which is a very calorically expensive activity, and then feed the baby with their body for up to 3 years. So they're always going to know that baby's theirs. Daddy might not know that. So how can a father ensure that he isn't being tricked, much like the reed warbler that Dr. Gwen was supposed to have talked to you about already? Reed warblers cuckold cuckoo birds because cuckoo birds respond to what's called a release stimulus, which is an open, gaping bird mouth. They have this tendency to feed open bird mouths. And so if you don't already know, Kinti schema in a baby's face is a release stimulus for us. We tend to perform better at fine motor tasks when we are exposed to cute baby faces, which are characterized by a lower brow line, shorter snout, larger forward-facing eyes. And mammalian Kinti schema is very similar to human Kinti schema, hence why we love puppies and why we are able to take care of non-human animals, which serves us no genetic survival promises at all. So these mixed reproductive strategies, men have different strategies to make sure that women don't cuckold them. One is mate guarding. They tend to be more sexually jealous and more protective of their women. Another interesting one that's not on this slide that Dr. Gwen probably wants to talk about is the shape of the human penis with the coronal ridge as a semen displacement mechanism. They are able to scrape out competitor semen from the vagina to make sure that whatever impregnation occurs happens by him. But another talent that men have that is of key in this lecture is their ability to pick out baby faces that look like them. So one interesting study that's worth note is that usually when people talk about baby resemblance, they tend to make comments about the baby's resemblance to the father more so than the mother. Daly and Wilson, who are the ones who founded Cinderella effect, were the ones who conducted that study. So the method of this research, men and women were pulled into a room and asked to have their pictures taken before answering some questions about childcare. The questions included things like, which child would you be most likely to give $50 to? Which child would you be least angry at if they were to break something valuable of yours? But what they didn't realize was that the pictures that were being taken of them before this questionnaire were being morphed to actual baby faces. And it looked a little something like this. So the face on the top right here was a participant, and then the face on the top left was just a random child, and if you look at the bottom photograph, it was a morphed image. So with spatial proximity, you can see the facial morph, but if you were to just isolate the bottom picture, you wouldn't be able to tell that that face belongs to the man above. And their vignettes looked a little something like this. They were presented with 5 baby faces, and which one of these children would you be most likely to adopt? So the results of this study was really significant because men were unwittingly choosing their own facial morphs. Women tended to choose faces that looked higher in Kinti schema and looked cuter. Men picked out their own faces without realizing it, and it was very statistically significant finding. So this is just a little bit of the data set. If you look at the asterisks by the numbers, that determines statistical significance. If you haven't already taken statistics for psychology, a p-value is basically the likelihood that your findings were due to confounding variables or chance. So to have a smaller p-value indicates higher statistical significance, and in psychology, before we can declare a study as statistically significant, it must have a p-value of less than 0.05, indicated by one asterisk. But if it has a p-value of less than 0.001, they get two asterisks, which means it's a really, really significant finding, that there's virtually no chance that this finding was due to a confound or to chance. So this top number here, which one of these children would you be most likely to adopt? 90% of men with a p-value of less than 0.001 picked their own facial morphs. Females had nothing. I mean, they 35%, which doesn't even get a p-value of less than 0.05. It was not a significant finding. Women didn't pick their own facial morphs. I think, let's see here, one really notable number is down if one of these children damaged something valuable of yours, which one would you punish the most? 0. None of the men picked their own facial morphs here. And it only gets one asterisk because 0 was such a stark number. It's difficult to calculate a low p-value on such a stark number like 0. So the fact that it even gets one asterisk is pretty amazing. But the reason why I bring attention to this number is that I think it sheds a lot of light on resource allocation. If a kid is damaging something valuable of yours, it's almost the same thing as you giving something to that kid or allocating a certain resource to them. And the fact that men really didn't want to allocate resources to a kid that didn't look like them is notable. So this is known as discriminative parental solicitude. We don't like allocating resources to kids that don't promise our genetic survival. And there are a lot of cases in which we take care of children and other animals that don't promise our genetic survival. So there's usually an explanation for each of those. Modern day adoption is a new thing. It's new in our behavioral repertoire. Adoption is not something that occurred in the environment of evolutionary adaptedness, so that can be explained more by sociocultural standards. Taking care of dogs and animals that we think are cute can be described by the Kintian schemic facial features as a release stimulus. So the one thing, though, that we haven't quite looked yet until recently at an explanation for is step parental care. So how does a step parent take care of a kid that doesn't belong to them without explanation? And according to modern research, they don't very well. Stepchildren are subjected to significantly more abuse and homicide than biological children worldwide. But one thing we do know about step parental care, it's a cross-culturally ubiquitous and almost certainly ancient affair. We have reason to believe that in the environment of evolutionary adaptedness, step parental care occurred. And we know that because it can be done in a mating effort. Investing resources to a mate's young of prior unions it can help you to be reproductively successful with that person. So a guy is able to, he meets a girl he likes and she's got a kid from a previous union. If, he's like, well, if I can really take care of this kid and allocate all my resources to him and show her how sweet I am to him, maybe she'll have a kid with me too. And the thing with that is humans are fairly monogamous. We're not very good at monogamy, but relationships would typically last longer than a single mating season. So, I mean, we're not like emperor penguins or anything, but we're better than prairie voles. We're pretty monogamous. So while the step parental care might have been favored by natural selection, the issue is that a step parent may not feel that wholehearted self-sacrificial love for their wards as do genetic parents. So that's when a scissor blade mismatch occurs, and something that might have been reproductively fitting can still come back to bite you. So the thing I want to stress, because there's a lot of you out there who probably have a step parent that you love very much or that they love you, or you might even be a step parent. Evolutionary psychology has a way of really making us all seem like animals, just very, very heartless animals. So I pulled a little quote from the Daly and Wilson article. Let us stress again that most step parents try hard to treat their stepchildren fairly, and extreme negative outcomes, despite being much more prevalent than in genetic parent homes, are infrequent. That said, however, it is also important to recognize that Cinderella is no fairy tale. So while we all have step parents that we might love or know a step parent that loves their stepkids very much, it's something that is cross-culturally ubiquitous, and this study has been replicated time and time again. So we're going to stop your lecture 1 at that. Please proceed to the quiz in the testing tab to the left on your Blackboard screen. And whenever you're ready, proceed on to lecture 2. Thank you.